But it is really my pleasure to introduce Ella and to hear her share.
Yeah.
Okay, one moment. Let me just not even look at you yet. Wow, you're already laughing. That's so kind.
You have your handwritten index cards? Oh, no, wait, you're a young one.
No, I have 14 pages of notes, full disclosure. My name's Ella Q, and I'm an ex-stoner. Hey, everybody. I'm really blessed to be standing up here. It's truly an honor to walk this path with you all. My freedom date is March 16th, 2020.
Yeah.
So if you're good at math, you know that that is 1,630 days. Or 4 years, 5 months, and 16 days. Some of you may also notice my youthful delight, and that is because I got sober at 21, so I'm 25 now. Hashtag young, represent. So now, who would like a good hard cry? Would anyone like to cry today? I would like to cry. Who doesn't cry? Anyone? No crying. Okay, I will cry for you, all of you, yes. Okay, yeah. So I'm anxious as shit. Let's just get that out of the way first. I've had a couple breakdowns this weekend about this share, but then I've also had really high highs about, being able to have this opportunity to talk to you all and share my story. So if now you would like to wiggle some anxiety out with me, I need to do this. Okay. I want this to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect, but that's why you're all here, because together we make it perfect. So as I was reflecting on doing this share, I was reflecting on the amount of people that I've talked to in my life, or like an amount of group of people before. And one time that I've talked to this many people was in church, but that doesn't really count. And then another time that I've talked in front of this many people was when I was campaigning for freshman class president, and I really made a really good effort to win this position. I handed out flyers. I came up with a motto, eloquent for the win. But I lost, and it was really embarrassing, and it was really sad and hard. And I hadn't remembered that memory until I was reflecting on sharing in front of this many people. So just vote for me, and that would be great. So I would appreciate that. And just to bring it back to the present, Chelsea's emotional regulation workshop yesterday really kind of grounded me in that, my biggest fear is that you all hate me and I look lame and boring. But yesterday I was able to remember that even if that's true, I like myself. And that's where I can come back to. That can be my truth for this share. So thank you for bearing with me for that very long-winded introduction. So I'll share in the traditional format of what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I was born in the year 1999, and shout out to Lori B for that reference. That's the same year that phone cameras were invented, as well as our beloved emojis. Kind of interesting. I grew up in Waspy, Connecticut, otherwise known as Greenwich, a suburb of New York. And I grew up around my mom and my dad and my sister, who, they played an important role in my life. But from what I remember, the majority of my childhood was pretty pleasant. But there are two memories that I wanted to share that stick out as kind of sore thumbs that characterized a lot of the rest of my, young adult years and the rest of my teenage years and youth. So one in particular, when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I was coming to terms with what being drunk meant. My dad and my uncle were usually the first ones to open the liquor cabinet, and when 5 o'clock hit, cocktail hour was over and drunken hour had started. My uncle was the one, my dad was the one that really couldn't keep up with the conversation, and my uncle was the one that was kind of making fun of him for it. And I remember one night being just so incredibly embarrassed and sad, and my sister and I were really upset. And we went downstairs and we hid under a table, and my mom came down and she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Daddy's drunk," and I was crying. And she said, "No, he's just tired." So, now standing in front of a room full of addicts, I, was also kind of fearful that nobody's going to believe me. Like, nobody's going to believe that I was so high that it was a problem. No one's going to believe that my dad was so drunk that it was a problem. But, there's a reason I'm here, and here we all are. So my second standout kind of memory from childhood was when my mom started traveling long-term for work. My mom, by the end of high school, she was traveling cumulatively about 4 months out of the year to faraway lands. And that kind of left me and my sister alone with my dad, who, for a lot of reasons, including his alcohol abuse and including his depression and just lack of general emotional attunement, we were kind of roommates from the time I was, 9, 10 until the rest of high school for those periods that my mom was gone. Thankfully, I had 2 women in my life, Kathy, who was my babysitter and longtime family friend, and my grandma, my maternal grandma, Nanny, and they did a really big role in taking care of us and being consistent adults in my sister and I's life. We also had neighbors that lived down the street, the Shaws, Sadhna and Vishali, shout out Sadhna and Vishali, and sisters for life. Like, they took care of us. They let us play outside when my dad was passed out at 5 o'clock at night. Everyone was playing outside at, during the summers, and we were kind of like tucked away. Like, what are we going to do? We want to go outside, and so we were safe with them. But back to that first trip that my mom took, this memory of her going on a 2-week trip to China. And about 2 days later, my sister and I got our braces on. I was 10 years old. And then 3 days later after that, there was a nor'easter, big hurricane. All the power went out. The lights were down. The trees were all over the place. And we had to deal with this like crazy intense situation, and also our mouths hurt really bad. And, it was me and my sister and like whatever we could kind of do to like make it work. And I have memories of that time, like cleaning the kitchen or making my sister and I dinner when, my dad wasn't able to, and I was proud of myself. I was like, wow, like this is like what being an adult is. But looking back, I'm like, wow, that really wasn't totally the best thing to be proud of. But I think if I didn't have the consistency of those people in my life, things could have looked a lot different. So my grandma died when I was 13, and my family moved to LA, not because my grandma died, but we moved to LA also. And the transition was really difficult. I mean, it was really exciting for this like teenager from Connecticut moving to LA. I was like, yeah, guys, I'm like gonna go to LA, California, whatever. That was really exciting for me. But the transition was really hard. I mean, with the instability of my family, it was then losing those consistent people in my life. The transition was really difficult. But regardless of the instability and the pain that I was feeling at home, stop. Regardless of the pain and instability I was experiencing at home, I found a home in my best friend Molly and her family. And from the first time we hung out. After that, I was at their house every weekend, pretty much, having sleepovers, movie nights, dance parties, karaoke, watching chick flicks, just every weekend. And they really took care of me, and they became those stable people in my life again. And I was able to find a home away from home for the first time since leaving Connecticut. However, as they do, the ills of high school began to fall on me. And we went to a public school that might as well have been a private school. The amount of pressure was absolutely insane. And by the end of high school, we knew at least 5 children who had died by a stress-related whatever, suicide, overdose, accidents. So that was really a characterization of the school that we went to. And our community didn't do a lot to support us with the stress that they put us under and the expectations that they had and the standards they were asking for us. So my first outlets were self-harm and suicidal ideation. And then really shortly after that, it was weed. And the first time I got high, I was 15 years old, and all I could say is, I fucking know. Like, I fucking know. I understand what it means to be high. I understand why my dad drinks all the time. I understand why people party. I get it. I fucking know. Like, it was over and over and over again. That's all I said all night, basically. She's like, yeah. And suddenly, reality was an illusion, and it didn't matter anymore. And I felt like I could breathe. And I found the only thing that I ever needed in my life. And I didn't need my parents to love me. And I didn't need them to take care of me. And I didn't need people to like me. And I didn't even really need to like myself, because I found this thing that was just going to make it okay. And it was just going to let me kind of be. In a video game, basically. I was like, yeah, okay, here we go. So within weeks, I became a daily smoker, and it continued like that for 6 more years. Wherever I could get my hands on it, there I was. And I was selfish when it came to my pursuit of getting high. I hurt people, and then I made them take care of me, namely my best friend and my sister. And I disregarded all caution coming from my parents, and I was really resentful because they couldn't enforce it. My mom would hand me articles about how it's going to destroy my brain and my memory and whatever, but then she would leave for a month. And then I'm like, okay, well, fuck it. Like, I'm just going to live my roommate life with my drunk dad and my sister, and like, we'll get through it, whatever, and you'll come back and micromanage, and like, we'll pretend it's fine, but you'll leave again, and then I'll keep doing my thing. And so that just continued and continued. And ultimately, I was treating myself like a piece of trash. Like, I just didn't really care about anything because I was depressed. So some highlights, or lowlights, from those 6 years. I got a traumatic brain injury from being high and dehydrated and exhausted, and I fainted in the shower. And I coped with that injury with weed, and it took me nearly a decade to recover from. I'll tell you more about that story later. But I was enduring years of chronic pain all that time. I traveled the world after high school by myself, and I took a gap year, but I had chronic tonsillitis the whole time. I was not able to stop smoking, even though I thought I wouldn't be able to have access to it. And my hygiene was really bad, and I just didn't really take care of myself. And I got kicked out of church camp that I worked at every summer. And this was the first place I ever learned unconditional love. It was the first place that I ever went to as an independent person and was able to be myself. And then I got kicked out because of my lifestyle. Californian. And to date, that is still the biggest heartbreak of my life. It's a work in progress, and it's still a present story for me. Me and that camp and our relationship, I have a lot of really meaningful relationships from that camp, but I still haven't healed that heartbreak. And ultimately, when I got to college, I started regularly trading my body for money and weed, and that left me in a shame cycle and lust for weed. My bottom is me standing on a mountaintop of sexual assault experiences and PTSD symptoms. And I didn't come into the rooms because I wanted to get sober. I came in because I needed therapy. And I couldn't pick up the phone. And I knew that weed was a barrier in doing that. Sometimes when I go to other programs, I feel the need to claim a low bottom. And I want you all to know that no matter what your bottom looked like, you belong here. It was low enough, and you never have to go back. And you can just stay here forever with me and your friends at your table, and we don't have to go back there. And that's what keeps me here. So, thank you for receiving that. I know it's heavy. Don't talk to me about it. Kindly.
We love a barrier.
Kindly, that's my boundary. Kindly. Don't bring it up to me in conversation. But it's why I'm here. It's ultimately why I'm here. My aforementioned drunk uncle was actually the first one to get sober in my life. He was the first person I ever knew to get sober. He has about 8 or 9 years now. And I was never really considering getting sober in AA. I'm more than reluctant to call myself an alcoholic because of my experience with my family. But it was the first time I saw someone with a problem who actually was able to change their life. He wasn't the reason I found out about MA, but when I found out about MA, that's when my scope of reality really changed. And there are some people that walk into your life and you're just like, holy shit, man, you were meant to be here the whole time. You're meant to stay here. You're meant to be here. You're meant to be here. And that's my best friend, Molly. And she's the one that found out about MA. And she was like, hey, dude, maybe you might be interested in this little program. I was like, wow, that sounds kind of interesting. She went and she was like, I don't know if this is for me yet, but you. Oh, God. So this meeting was 6 blocks from my house in San Francisco. And every week, I watched the clock go by, and I was like, yep, it's Tuesday, it's 7 o'clock, okay. I'm just gonna keep doing my thing. And I did that for a couple of weeks, and I knew where it was, and I knew when it was, and I was like, okay, let's go. No. And then eventually I was like, I'm never gonna get there on my own. I need accountability, even to get there. That's what we're all about, we're about being accountable to each other, and I needed that accountability even to walk into the room. So I recruited a normie friend, and I was like, hey, man, you need to get me to this meeting, and she did. And from the first meeting, I knew I was in the right place. I heard the questions, I heard a great share. I cried during the unity prayer. I read the literature after, or I took the pamphlets. I don't know if I read them. I took them. And I probably tried to get out of there pretty quickly, but when I was leaving, I was stopped. Hey, you, stop. And I got a hug. And I got a hug that would change my life forever. I'm laughing so I'm not crying, just so we're all clear. A hug that would change my life forever. And whether this is your first experience with in-person MA or it's your 20th convention, I hope that you all get to experience that embrace this weekend. Whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, that embrace is what, like, whew, yeah, that got me here. So let's air hug right now. Oh, love. Thanks, guys. So that hug came from my now sponsor, who is keeping tabs on me for the next 4 months as I continued to use after meetings, before meetings. I came to meetings. I would use after meetings. And then I came back, and then I would get a couple days, and then I would use again, and then I'd go back to meetings. But what stayed consistent is I did go to that meeting every week after I walked in the door. So if you don't take anything else away from my share, take this. Just keep coming back. It's said for a reason. Keep coming back. Go to the fucking meetings. Just like get in the door, log onto your computer, come to a convention if that's just the yearly like keep coming back that you do. But just keep coming back. And so at one point I even gave myself a 30-day chip for my 21st birthday. This was, just to be clear, this is before the day I have now. Anyways, there was a relapse after that. But I gave myself a 30-day chip for my 21st birthday, and then that night proceeded to go out and drink and use drugs, but I didn't smoke weed. And I'm glad that that's not the version of recovery I have now. I'm glad that I had that as a part of my experience to understand the version of recovery I want now. But it wasn't that. And I even had a planned relapse. I made a plan. I was like, okay, spring break, like I'm gonna have my last goodbye. I'm gonna say goodbye to my best friend, weed, and we're gonna do it at this time on this day. And as we all know, that doesn't work. But luckily enough for me, my day one is day one of lockdown in San Francisco, first day of the pandemic, basically. And so I was able to create a little Zoom rehab in my room, and I went to 3 to 5 to 7 meetings a day. Shout out to the 9 a.m. Women Wake and Embrace Recovery at the beginning of the pandemic. That was a good time. That meeting really, that was the kicker for a while. So I'd like to take a moment now to thank some of my day ones. And it's so cheesy, but when I was writing this draft, I was like, there's no words. There's really not words. But these people mean the most to me. And Lori B., my sponsor. I'm so inspired by you. And I think our relationship now is the thing that speaks the most to the miracles. The fact that we get to show up for each other. That's not something that every sponsee gets to with their sponsor. You know, some people do the steps and then I don't know what happens, but I'm just eternally grateful for the way that we've worked the steps and for the time that it's taken and for the depth that we've reached. And I am proud of myself for the way that I love myself. And I learned how to do that through your unconditional love for me. We say, okay, I only have so much time. I'm just kidding. Bring it on. They say that we love you until you can love yourself. And that was Lori and I's relationship. That was what I can love myself because of you. And you've altered the course of my life. And it's great. Okay, moving on. Okay, Mahala, my soul sister. That's Molly. Thank you for keeping me alive during my addiction and being a reason to live during my recovery. if you have, it's a very rare case, but if you've ever gotten sober with someone who's close to you, you can understand the miracle that it has been for me to get sober with my best friend. We got addicted together. We went through some really shitty bottoms together. And here we are on our third convention together. I didn't lose you in this process. I only got deeper with you. And thank you for just existing.
Molly!
Molly! You knew this was coming. Stella. My day... Stella! My day one recovery bestie. Stella gave me a birthday card. When I got that 30-day chip for my 21st birthday, that was like a big thing. I was like talking about it every week. It was like whatever. Stella gave me a birthday card with her number on it. That's how I got her number. And it just went to show the type of person that you are. To like show up. I'm not going to stop it. It went to show the person that you are and the way that you show up for your friends and the way that you show up in your recovery. You are a daily reminder for me that recovery is a daily process.
That's right.
You work this program so hard. I'm making you cry. That's so nice. And lastly, just one last thing. Stella brought me into another program, and I was, like I said, really, really reluctant to go to this other program. But you've showed me that I can show up as an addict, and I can be there, and I can claim space, and I'm meant to have fellowship, and I'm meant to have friends, and I'm meant to have sober support. And you showed me that. You, like, led the way on that, even though you're like, I don't really know. It's okay. But... Yeah. I love you. Also, just real quick, we've gone on a lot of sober trips. We've gone on a lot of sober adventures and hikes. And I think the best part of being friends with you is that when we say we're going to do something, we do it. And we've always said that. That, like, when we got sober, we said we were going to do shit, and we did it. And that was a miracle. Like, that has been a miracle. And I love that we get to keep each other accountable. So, yeah, these three women have spread the message far and wide and deep when it comes to my journey. Yeah. And I want to shout out a couple of people also in this room who have been with me since the beginning. And I mean, all of you have. It's been all of our faces all together. And if you've impacted my journey, you know. But Cass and Zach and Kathy and John and Nina and Mariska and Tiffany and Anthony, and Jules and Ellie, and Pam, and Audrey, who's hopefully on the live stream. Feel better, Audrey. And all my Monday Munchies fam, whether you're here or not. Thank you for witnessing me these last few years, and crying with me, and cheering me on. I wouldn't make it through the night without my fellows, and that also includes every single one of you. So thank you for showing up. Like, you're doing service right now if no one told you today. Mm-hmm. You're doing service. So what it's like now. Also, shout out to my family. Shout out family. They're not watching because I told them they couldn't. And I have a little bit of guilt about that, but not too much because it's a healthy boundary for me. But I'd also like to thank my family. They really supported me to be able to take time off of school and work part-time and get sober and deal with the chronic pain journey that I'm about to tell you about. So what it's like now, or what it was like getting sober and what it's like now. I spent the first 3 years of my recovery in a daily war with my head. For about the first year and a half, I was bedridden with chronic pain, chronic migraines. I physically could not do online school because of looking at a screen was too painful. My favorite activity was crying and looking out the window and listening to pain frequency music. My besties have seen me on so many occasions lying in a dark room with an ice pack on my head, just like sobbing from pain. And all I wanted to do was smoke, but I had realized at that point, like, I had been living with this chronic pain for years. I knew what it was from, and I needed to be able to work through this injury. And I tried everything. I took steroids, I took all the migraine medications, I did acupuncture, I did biofeedback, I did all the things you could think of. People were suggesting things left and right, and I did them. And neurologists kept throwing in my face that I was just a person living with chronic migraines now. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me, sir. It's not my menstrual cycle, actually. It's an injury from about 8 years ago, and I know this. And could you just help me? Can you please just help me? Eventually I started taking nerve pain medication, and that helped kind of improve my quality of life. But my tolerance just got more and more, and it made me drowsy. And then I was just really tired all the time, and my quality of life was like that much better, but kind of like getting worse as my tolerance would build back up. And it wasn't until I did that for about 1.5 years, that kind of cycle of like being drowsy and still in pain though. It wasn't until my current partner said to me, who has also dealt with chronic pain in his life, I know you're tired. I know you're exhausted of dealing with insurance. And at this point, it's beyond you, but you have the support to try one more time to find something that's going to help you heal. So just one more time, just try. So I went on the one resource that I had not yet exhausted. It was TikTok.
I knew it.
I wanted to find community for people with post-concussion syndrome that was long-term. Whenever I looked online for anybody's experience, it was the longer you live with this, the less likely you are to ever make a full recovery. And I was 8 years in at that point, so I was like, oh, fuck, shit. I just sit down. But then I looked on TikTok. And I don't think I would have ever found recovery for my head if I didn't trust myself enough to, one, know what was wrong in the first place. I knew this was an old injury. Two, that I could trust myself enough to fight for myself, that I could answer that call to keep going one more time. And three, lean on support and encouragement for other people to get me to the other side. And these rooms taught me that. Like, I wouldn't have had recovery from this injury that was so old if I didn't have these rooms to teach me these lessons of, you can do this, you're not alone. Like, you have support, you are able to now trust yourself, you do know intuitively what's up. Go for it. That's been hands down the biggest miracle. Like, talk about a miracle. I have like a headache a month now. Woo! I was in a cycle of being in pain for 2 or 3 weeks nonstop. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I couldn't even open my eyes from the pain. And I'd have a 3 or 4 day break, and then I'd go right into another 2 or 3 week cycle. And I was bedridden for the first 1.5 years. I mean, I was doing Zoom meetings, but sometimes I just had my camera on and I was off and I was listening. And like I said, my favorite activity for that 1.5 years was crying, looking out my window, and listening to pain relief frequency music. It was really sad. It was really sad. But I'm really happy now. Happy. Generally pain-free. Yeah. It's a miracle. So I'm going to take this.
Eloquent for the win.
So another miracle that I've found in this program is the work I do now. When I was still using, I went to an involvement fair at my school, and I heard this woman talk about her job working with mothers with severe mental health issues. And these mothers were really inspired to reunite with their kids and get well and do better in their life. And I was like, wow, that sounds like an amazing job. It had flexible hours, and you could choose your own schedule. And I was like, wow, this is like a really good gig for a student. And so, yeah, I was really interested in doing this. But I understood that I had zero capacity to do that work right in that moment. I didn't have any capacity to take care of myself on the emotional level that I would need to do that work, or just any emotional capacity for other people. So when I got about 20 days under my belt the following year, I applied for that job. And I went to another job fair, and because I knew that this organization was going to be there. And I walked in the door, and I walked up to the booth, and my former boss was like, "Ella Quinn, I saw you walk in. We were going to call you." And I was like, "Oh, shit, really? That's cool." And he asked me some questions, and I got hired on the spot. And I was like, wow, okay. You know, one, they're desperate, obviously. Two, I can do this job. I can show up, and that could be doing this job right now. So one relapse, and a couple months later into the pandemic, I was working at this dream job that I had been thinking about for about a year, and I was helping moms. Yeah, I worked there about 3.5 years until I started the job I'm at now, which is working with low-income seniors with severe mental health issues. And I'm not as sure exactly what brought me into this severe mental health space. But the more that I kind of reflect on my clients with schizophrenia, I'm like, wow, I actually had some serious delusions that stayed with me for a couple of years. And so one delusion that I'd like to share that I lived with for a couple of years was about a specific mafia group that was protecting me. And I fully believed that I was a protected agent of this particular mafia group. And I was so valuable that they were surveilling me so that I wouldn't be assassinated. This is what I believed. So when my clients talk to me about being friends with Elon Musk or Trump, or people are coming into their homes and shaving their facial hair in the middle of the night, I kind of understand where they're coming from. I have that experience. I believed that delusion for years, full-heartedly. You know, there were people in my life who knew, who I was being watched by and followed by. And, okay, I'll wrap it up. So, I'm going to bring it to myself.
Yeah.
So, I have a relationship with my highest self, and I call them Truly. And it's the little gold light in front of me, inside of me, all around me, that keeps me connected to my highest potential and my truest being. And even though never can I all the time actualize that highest potential, I'm connected to them. I'm connected to that source. And, I have sponsees who I can carry the message to, and then they carry the message to other people. And I can see that truly energy in them just kind of radiating out to everyone. I have kittens. I just got kittens a couple weeks ago. So I have these little beings that depend on me for like food and cleaning their litter box. And I can do that, and I can show up for them. And it's been a great lesson to understand how I can do that for myself. And one of the biggest ways I do that for myself is with boundaries. And I get to protect myself. And I get to rely on those boundaries to be able to show up in the ways that I do in this program, in my work, in my relationships. I have really happy and healthy friendships and a loving partner who gives me space to explore the big feelings that I'm feeling. And we get to do that for each other. And I'm working on it all. It's all a work in progress. I show up today and I had like multiple like breakdowns this weekend about this share, but like I think it went okay. I have today the willingness to be afraid. I have the willingness to be afraid and the willingness to get up here and the willingness to walk out my door knowing that like there was one point where I was so afraid I was going to have a migraine attack and I couldn't walk out the door. Or I was so afraid someone was going to attack me on the street and I was so hypervigilant all the time because of those PTSD symptoms. But now I have willingness to be afraid that I can like show up and I can screw up and I can like represent my version of the program no matter who kind of responds to that. I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for being here and listening to me and giving me your attention and keep coming back. Yes.